Hello, Chris here. I'm here to introduce our second From the Vault audio episode we're getting up on this YouTube channel. This one comes to us from back in March when we talked about Ne Zha 2, which is a Chinese movie that had a very limited US release in its original Mandarin dub in February, and in the months since has become the highest grossing animated movie of all time and the highest grossing non-English language film of all time, with a total take of around $2.2 billion, which is crazy. We really enjoyed the movie, and you'll definitely hear us, as well as our friend Jared Garalde, wax poetic about it a lot in the episode you're about to hear. Like, the animation is truly incredible, and that's all I'll say about it for now. Then last month, A24 announced that they had gotten the rights to distribute the English dub of the movie in about 2,200 theaters across the country, which is kind of why we're re-releasing this right now. And the three of us saw this version about a week ago. We thought the dub held up really well, and our opinions from March really didn't change that much. In fact, they may have gotten better in some cases, although Michelle Yeoh's performance as Ne Zha's mom is subpar, to put it politely, which is very funny since she's kind of supposed to be a big selling point for the English dub. What's interesting, though, is that the US box office for the English dub hasn't even come close to the box office for the Mandarin version. That made about $8 million total when it played here in only 660 screens, and the English dub has only made about $2 million in its opening weekend, so not many people are biting on this, which is a shame because I certainly think it's worth a watch in whatever language you find it in. Anyways, this has been my little context blur for this re-release of our Ne Zha 2 episode, and now I'll leave everything else to the March 2025 versions of ourselves. Enjoy.
And welcome back to another episode of Pinoys versus the World. My name is Harald Hyllseth.
My name is Chris Angkico.
And Chris, exciting day, exciting couple of weeks for the group, and a very exciting few weeks for movies here. We're here to get into a very long day of recording, but we're happy for this first pod to bring in a Pinoy boy himself, someone who's been with us in our marathon of movies we've seen recently, Jared Garalde. Welcome back to the pod.
Hey guys, welcome. Glad to be here.
And happy birthday, Yana. You know, we got to spread the love out there. Happy birthday, Yana. We are today going to talk about recent worldwide cultural phenomenon, Ne Zha 1 and Ne Zha 2. But before we hop into our conversation about Ne Zha 1, shout out to Marcus Lawrence, giving us a little bit of brightness in a dark time, in a dark week for Seattle sports fans. Chris, you said most devastating D line in recent memory for the Hawks. Now that we've added D-Law to the team since the LOB days.
I mean, my word was vicious. My word was vicious. That's what I
like the word vicious.
I'm gonna go with that for now. I mean, I feel like DeMarcus Lawrence is kind of he's a lower risk signing, I think, at this point, just because, you know, he's a little bit on the older side. He's had some injury history, but it's nice because basically, like, the deal is like 3 years, 18 million guaranteed, essentially. So it's like you can cut him loose pretty quick. But cool signing. Was not expecting it.
Signing.
This happened like an hour before we're recording this right now. So yeah, very fresh. We're going to talk about it.
We have to talk about it
just a tiny bit.
Marquez Valdez Scantling too. As Jared was saying, every of the last
MVP magnet.
There we go. He's always played with the MVP. Sam Darnold, time to step it up, brother. Oh man, we'll see what John Schneider's cooking up.
He doesn't have to because MVS is there, and it will happen.
It'll just happen. Yeah,
it'll just happen. He's there already. He's here already.
And he's the glue.
I imbue you with the powers of the MVP trophy.
He brings his own miniature version of the MVP trophy with him from time to time, day to day. Beautiful thing. Let's get some offensive line. Let's get some love for maybe one more wideout. I think Cooper Kupp would love a homecoming. Would this be a bit of a we want Coop? Yakima. All the families in Tacoma.
Boys. Let's get it.
Come on. Just a Washington family through and through. That's why they call it a variety show. We had to talk about that.
We were at WSU and he was playing at Eastern.
Oh my gosh. And cooked us, torched us. Like we almost lost that game. That might have been my freshman year at WSU in 2015.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Oh man, I think they beat us. Honestly, I'm just gonna give it to the Eagles.
I think it was the
Shout
year
out
they
the
did
Eagles.
beat us, actually.
That
Crazy.
was a crazy run. I remember it was either the year before any of us were in college, Chris, but they also almost beat UW at UW, right? That might have been the year before, the year after they played us in Pullman. But this is coming off of the fresh national championships in D2 because they were D2
They might just be FCS,
FCS
just a different version of Division One.
for
So
sure.
the ones
FCS
that have
champions.
a big playoff bracket. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out Spokane. Shout out to Cheney, Washington. We will see what the Hawks are going to do. But again, good to talk about it a little bit. We're going to jump into the heart of the pod today. Ne Zha 1. We're going to start with it because most of this pod is going to be about the second one, obviously now becoming the highest grossing animated film of all time.
I think we need to start this by prefacing if you're listening to this and you have no idea what we're talking about, sort of thing. So basically, like, there's this set of movies now. I mean, Ne Zha 2 is the one that's like kind of making the rounds right now. It's currently the 6th highest grossing movie ever. It is the first movie to make $1 billion in one country domestically, which is in this case is China, and is the highest grossing animated movie of all time, beating Inside Out 2 recently, which itself took the crown like a few months ago or whatever. So really, I mean, at first, I mean, I was just seeing like just random things where it's just like, oh, random reviewers on YouTube just be like, okay, like this movie's really good. This movie out of China is like really good. The animation is amazing, and you just see like some random letterbox reviews and things all over the place that just say nothing but positive things about it. And so when you see that, I'm sure there's still people that either live in an area that don't have access to it, or people that are just like, what the hell is this thing? Like that kind of echo the sentiment I had before I watched the movie. Is that like, is this like a scam, or like, is this like, what exactly is this? Like, why is everyone just waxing poetic about this thing I've never heard of and it's so popular? But then if you're in an area like ours where the movie is available and you can watch it in IMAX and you can kind of see it on a big screen, and like, there's a sizable Chinese population as well, and it just all comes together and you're just kind of like, wow, like that movie is actually pretty good. It's like it really just kind of takes you by the whole experience. I think it just kind of took the American box office, especially the places where it played, like out of nowhere. And so now we're here talking about these two movies that 3 weeks ago we had not heard of whatsoever. So I think that's just kind of I think that's just a little bit of a context to sort of set this up. Like what is this and what are we talking about? Why are we talking about? Why are we dedicating an entire episode to this movie that isn't widely available in America, at least in the outside cities?
Yeah, and we didn't know, me and Harald, I know, we didn't go into this with any prior knowledge. Chris, you kind of just was like, hey, do you want to watch this? And we didn't go in with anything. And it was insanity. Like, I didn't know what to expect. And you mentioned it was the highest grossing animated film of all time. And you're like, kind of go into that of like, oh, okay, maybe, I mean, it could be good. It could not be good. And it was definitely really good on this side.
No, absolutely spectacular. I mean, we were talking with you for a few days before we went and saw Ne Zha 2, which we should also preface that we did see Ne Zha 2 in theaters, thankfully in IMAX. That movie, I mean, and it was a slightly different experience in both IMAX and the regular standard screen size that we had a chance to see for a second time yesterday after going back and revisiting Ne Zha 1 and getting to finally see kind of like the full story told in the way it was supposed to be told. But there is something so, I think, wonderful about this film, something so enticing, and it's very easy to see how even outside of mainland China that there is a lot of love coming from small circles of creators and reviewers on the internet. So without further ado, and that was lovely context. We honestly couldn't have jumped into this without any of that context, Chris. And it's very important to bring that up because as we jump into our conversation about Ne Zha, one, I'd like to preface it by saying you can just watch this movie on YouTube for free. I literally had it on behind me. I think I was having internet trouble because I couldn't run the YouTube movie at the same time as us recording this pod. But Ne Zha 1, directed by Xiao Zhe. We're working on the pronunciation, but we're getting there. And just not necessarily what I would call an achievement or anything crazy, but a good, solid movie. So I'm going to throw it over to Chris to just give your initial thoughts on the first film that came out in 2019, I believe. 2019.
Yeah, 2019. I mean, it was one of those things where it's just like, again, it was more just homework for, I needed to watch it just because like do the homework for the second movie, of course. And like obviously, the basically the main story is about like this like, these two like pearls of power basically. It's like a demon pearl and a spirit pearl. And the spirit pearl is like will make like a virtuous, like powerful being, and the demon pearl is like kind of a more like, hot-headed evil-ish being. And so the way it kind of starts is that there's like this family, again, there's this family that's been chosen to basically put the spirit pearl into their kid. And then basically at the last minute, that pearl is stolen and is swapped out for the demon pearl. So basically this family gets like a demon baby. And so, you know, and there's basically the whole movie is like, how is this family going to basically raise this like this child with like inherently evil traits? And so it's a very much that kind of thing. And there's like dragons and stuff get involved, and like I don't know, it's just kind of that again. That's kind of the main like part of the movie, and it's just sort of like you know. And there's also kind of the demon pearl has like basically like a hex put on it that it's going to get killed in like 3 years. And then there's like kind of a climax where the two like Ao Bing, Ne Zha is the demon pearl, I should say that, and then Ao Bing is the spirit pearl. It's the other sort of main character of this thing, and it's based off like a Chinese fable. But kind of the twist of it in these sets of movies is that the two of them become friends. Like in the original fable, from what I've read, at least on Wikipedia, just random things. They're pretty like mortal enemies, like Ao Bing and Ao Guang, who's like his father, and like they're dragons. They like to kill lots of people. And sort of they kind of set it up as like, or at least going into it, I'm sure as someone from China, you would know like the kind of the history of that story. But the twists are kind of interesting. Or you got something?
Yeah, and I think it should be noted too. Like we didn't really have this context going in, but like this is the legend of Ne Zha and Ao Bing and all of these characters come from one Chinese legend, but also it's based on the book. I think a 16th century novel, like Investiture of the Gods, and so I think definitely there is like some cultural context there, which is really interesting. But yeah, so it yeah, go back to given the context. But I thought that was a really interesting, like they are playing off of like these known characters and kind of making their own story to it, which is really fun.
Yeah, I mean, considering that it was mostly made for a Chinese market, they could have easily gotten away with just doing the fable probably straight up, just being like, okay, like only it doesn't really matter, only us in China, we kind of are familiar with this, but they didn't have to like twist it like they did. But I think the twists, like the modifications they make to it, make it a much more interesting story, especially when you get into the second one. It's like these people are not inherently, one's not good and one's not evil. The lines get blurred, and that's kind of that's kind of like one of the main threads of both the movies, I think. It's just that everyone kind of gets blurred together and things turn out the way you don't expect.
It's really subversive in a cool way, where if you were to compare even the first Ne Zha movie, and I mean they really get into it a lot more in the second. um you compare that to movies that traditionally we've been blessed to grow up around, like really like classics from animation studios like Disney and Pixar when they were separate entities. Groups like people who have made Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think from that era, like the 2000s, the late 90s, mid 90s, really had a lot of quality animated films that could both be appreciated by kids and adults alike, and kind of had mixed, messages that could be picked up by people depending on not only their background but their age group they were in at the time they were watching that film. I do think as of late, especially with the big blockbuster hits, Inside Out is one thing, but you know, I don't think you can say that's been hitting as much for American audiences or traditionally what we're exposed to in wide animated releases in movie theaters. So, like I said, it's not as prominent in Ne Zha 1 as it ends up being in the second film that we'll get into after the break. But I did want to point that out too, because I think these are good points about subversion and how to work off of probably tales and gods and cultural context, like you were saying, Jared, that we are not accustomed to. So we're not even walking into the movie with like a super deep knowledge of any of this cultural context, and the way it probably, we know it hit differently for folks in China especially. But even Chris and I, we're talking about it on the way home from watching it again yesterday. There are a lot of beats in both of these films that can be enjoyed by all audiences of all backgrounds, cultures, age groups. And honestly, yeah, pick it up from there, Chris, because it's a very interesting point to be made.
Are you referring to the poop and pee jokes that
And the fart
are
jokes,
very prominent?
specifically the fart jokes.
It was funny. Yeah, before I sort of piggyback off your point, Harald, it is kind of funny, like the weird tonal shifts of like just like random poop and fart and like vomit jokes that are just kind of littered in this thing. You're like, wow, that's it's like very kids movie, very like schlock kids movie stuff, especially in the first movie. Because the animation isn't as good. It feels like a movie that's a little more suited for free on YouTube type thing that you could watch, not, devoid of any context that the second movie's way better. It's just kind of a funky thing that happens.
And that being said, though, like, when we were watching it the first time, you were kind of downplaying it. You were like, when we first watched Ne Zha 1, we were like, it's definitely not as good as the second one. Completely agree, but I think it is definitely really the animation can be a little bit sketchy sometimes, but I think it is really like anchored with like a lot of heart. The characters, they really make you love Ne Zha, like the titular character, and it's really anchored by like those relationships. And honestly, I think we were talking about like some of the fight scenes are just like really creative. That last scene is just super fun. The last final battle that they have, and there's a lot of creative stuff going on with it. And I think it just goes to show they had a lot to work with, and they kind of realized the full potential of the characters and like the concept in the second movie for sure. But they were laying the groundwork really, I think, really well in the first one, actually.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you guys bring up a couple points that I want to touch on. Is that like the director, obviously, he's got, I mean, obviously in the first movie, if you watch both these movies, you realize if you watch it, the first movie first, is that like he's got lots of like interesting ideas for fight scenes, but you could just tell he just didn't have the budget to fully execute on all of them. And sort of maybe like, and then going into the second one with like a whole other movie under your belt and like double the budget and probably like quadruple the animators. I don't know exactly what the figures are, but you could just tell that like all the outlandish, wild ideas, very like ambitious ideas that he had, he could execute just because he had the resources to do so. And then, the end result of it is like, again, I don't know in terms of the listener here, like, if you've seen the movie or if you're going to see the movie or you have a chance to see the movie, but it's like those two, like in tandem, when you see the progression from one to the second, the first one to the second one, it's like, it's night and day. But you can see like the genesis there of some of the cool ideas that he could do.
And they're almost meant to play off of each other. Like it definitely felt, I watched this first one again before we watched the second one, and it definitely feels like it is one just big story. Like it's definitely meant to be like a trilogy. Maybe it wasn't, but it definitely feels like very cohesive as a story.
No, it's so true. I mean, I think you're bringing up a great point. I mean, there could even be 4 films of this. We don't even know what their plan is. Like it took it took what, 5 years to develop and produce and animate the second film. Which leads us to where we're at today, talking about the first film 6 years after it came out. There are a couple, before we move on to our conversation about the second, because I think that's what this is leading to. I think we like Ne Zha 1. I think there are things to really like about it. It's not like spectacular. And I don't think a movie like that on its own would have created as much buzz as it's starting to build, in the West and Europe, in places that weren't showing the movie inside of China. Ne Zha 1 has a couple fight scenes towards the end of the movie that I really want to touch on. The first one being Tai's painted world, where actually a lot of the movie kind of takes place after a certain point. I think that and the final fight scene where Ne Zha and Ao Bing in their pearl forms and demon orb forms like come together to save the town. Those are just inklings of what would eventually lead to what you see in the second film.
I would like to give a little more, even more context about like the story. I think just try to fill in as many gaps as possible, but like sort of like the main conceit of the movie, even though there's like demon pearls and spirit pearls and all this other stuff, is that like Ne Zha, because he is a demon and he's just like a very chaotic, like most of the movie is like a 3-year-old kid basically, and because he has all this power in this city and in this village, he's basically an outcast and someone that people fear because he just causes chaos throughout this entire town essentially. And so that's kind of the tension of like his character, is that like, he has all this power and the parents are trying to like rein him in and like try to keep him protected, but at the same time, the village doesn't like him and they sort of turn against him, even though they seem to like respect the parents a lot. Whereas meanwhile, the spirit pearl, who is at this point in the possession of like the quote unquote evil, kind of a little more antagonistic dragons, they've produced a very like virtuous person who is essentially, because there's like kind of a prophecy, the dragons basically want Ao Bing, their spirit pearl guy, to defeat Ne Zha in battle in front of everybody, so that the dragons can basically get glory and like ascend to heaven. There's all like these like rules about immortality and all this stuff like that. But it's
Like
essentially sort of,
cultivation.
yeah. But it's
Yeah.
essentially that pull of like, can you, in terms of the Ne Zha question, is like, can you take a kid, that has every intention of being like just evil naturally and try to like guide them toward like the right path? That's kind of the main,
Yeah,
one of
like
the main, like,
overcoming your fate type of
yeah,
is something that's like mentioned a lot. That I really like that because it's like parallel too with like Ao Bing, he was born a demon too, but he's, inherently good. And then, Ne Zha is like inherently bad, but he's just trying to be good. So there's always like that. I mean, we love like a good just parallel, antagonist, but I mean, he's not even really like an antagonist in the movie. Like they're all different goals. And yeah, it's just there's a lot of sweet moments that come from that, I think, within the first one, like uh I really like the moment where he they play shuttlecock for the first time and he starts crying because he's like, "Hey, this is the first person I played with outside of my mom," and it was just such a sweet moment, and like that parallel is just so
yeah.
good between
And
those two.
and again, just for context, the joke of the movie is that Ne Zha can kick a shuttlecock really hard, and
Yeah,
like the mom can barely take it, even though she's also got some power. But like the shuttlecock basically just like drives anyone that plays Ne Zha into the wall. Um, so yeah, people try and fail to keep up frequently with him because he's very very unhinged when it comes to playing shuttlecock.
A joke that is also beautifully interwoven into the second film in ways that I really like. The context about the first time was like, oh yeah, this could be played for a couple good emotional beats, but after seeing the first movie, it becomes a lot clearer the importance of some of these devices and especially the shuttlecock. I do kind of want to end our conversation about the first movie by just touching a bit on who eventually personally becomes one of my favorite characters of this entire series in the second movie, but Shen Gongbao and his relationship with this his side as a demon leopard monster trying to reach the ascension of an immortal in this universe and constantly having to fight back against who he really is and trying to assimilate and find the way forward for him. And eventually, as you find out in the second film, I'm sure a lot of it like has to do as well making his family proud and his dad proud, but he is really played as like an antagonistic villain in the first movie.
Yeah, like I'm gonna do my next like pop-up DVD little note here to basically be like, yeah, Shen Gong Bao is on the side of the like antagonistic dragons. He essentially serves the dragons and like carries out some of their bidding in this movie to basically sort of help the dragons accomplish their goals with the spirit pearl and whatnot. But yeah, he's very one note in the first movie. He's basically just like the enforcer because he's the only one that can sort of like leave this pit that the dragons are stuck in, and so they just recruit him to go out and do all the dirty work, essentially.
Well, even at the beginning of the film, when you're the only time in the series so far, spoiler alert, that you see the Supreme Lord, someone who's mentioned a lot in the second film, um, you see who is given the right and the really important task of taking care of the spirit pearl. As we haven't even said this yet, like, right, you might have said this at the beginning, but when the chaos pearl is meant to explode, destruct, pretty much self-destruct after 3 years, that all that's left is or the chaos pearl is meant to or geez, the chaos pearl is the main thing. There's a lot of devices here. The demon orb is meant to explode in 3 years. But that spirit pearl and the responsibility of that is given to the who's played off as a lot less put together, maybe a little less hardworking. Tai, just like a funnier guy, like the guy who ends up becoming Ne Zha's master. And Shen Gong Bao, who at the very beginning of the movie, you're just supposed to, at least to me, get the idea that he has worked really, really freaking hard to get to where he's at. And just to kind of have it cast aside in the moment by the Supreme Lord, just to give that right to Tai, again, who's someone who didn't even put up a too good of a fight to stop the Chaos Pearl when it came into being. To be fair, neither one of them did. But it all starts there, and we get into a lot more in the second film, which I think is great. But Ne Zha won. That's probably a good place to, I think, bring it to a close. Any final thoughts on the first movie, y'all?
I mean, I think we basically covered most of it. It's like without like completely spoiling the movie. That's kind of the basic setup is that you got these two pearls that are in these two guys, and they're sort of like fated to sort of clash and like kind of go at it. But I guess probably the thing we haven't I realize at least I haven't said yet is that the two of them, yeah, basically are like friends. Like they consider the other one like their only friend, as compared to like maybe in literature that they are antagonists and they want to like
Yeah.
destroy each other. They very quickly make it clear that like these two like want to work together.
Yeah,
Like
they're just
they're
one and the same. They're
yeah,
they're basically like brother from another mother type of thing, like
yeah.
for real, and it's
Like like
so
they're
good.
they're sort of like fighting their destiny, both from like the literature and just like again what people in this movie, the expectations of the two of them. Like,
Mm.
they want them to face off, but they don't want to. They're just like, like, yeah, exactly. There's like brother from another mother, like kindred souls kind of thing. It's like, we're the only ones that know what this power feels like. And, we want to like use it together, essentially.
Yeah, I like what you said about like overcoming not just like the in universe thing, but also like our expectations of like the book and the novel. You know what I mean? They're kind of subverting that, and they're overcoming all of that. Um, I want to know your like out of 5 rating, or I don't know what we rate it. 5. How many shuttlecocks out of 5
I
are we
I
rating this? And overall thoughts, like summary of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I gave it 3.5 out of 5 when I watched it. I think it's just again a lot of good ideas, but like some of the like just for budgetary reasons and just like it just doesn't look as good as it could. And it's got like the great like meat and potatoes of a story that they keep continue in the second movie. But I was like, yeah, it was solid, but it didn't like, and again, great ideas, but didn't really clear the at least the 4-star threshold for me. The first one.
I'm going to go on a slightly lower, I mean, as low as you can get at 3.5. I think the final third of the movie really saves it for me. Like Chris had said, maybe the way that it was sold off as being like it doesn't even compare. You see the second movie and you're like, wow, like, and this is no shot at the director or anyone who was involved in the production of the first film. But obviously you can see what happens when you have money and belief behind the studio to really like bring to life the vision. And like you were saying, Chris, earlier, like the ability for this director to be like, all right, I've got all of the resources in the world and conceivably a pretty decent amount of time to bring to life the full vision at the end of the day. And I'm sure this third movie will even get even more support after the second film's success. But I really do like the last third of Ne Zha 1, which really brings it from a 3 to 3.5 for me, especially all the action scenes. And again, just a lot of good foundations for a really funny, great callbacks, like a good range in the second film that are like, I think, done super tastefully. And like you said, it feels like one full story. which sometimes with sequels is difficult to draw a through line. Like the second film, as we'll talk about, just picks up where the first film leaves off, and there are some emotional beats, and they leave you just enough. But yeah, I think I'm going to a solid 3.5 shuttlecocks out of 5 for the first one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. I definitely think 3.5, 3.7, maybe. I don't know.
7.
I think there's a lot.
3.7.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's just a lot to love about it. I think. I think it's definitely giving like, the your least favorite DreamWorks movie type of vibe, but at the same time, just taking it for what it is and without the context of the second film, which I think was kind of a little bit hard to do, because we saw the second film first. I think that was definitely, if I'm taking it as it is, I think it's actually really good, because I think there's a lot of, I watched it with my girlfriend, who loved it, and that was her first time watching it before she watched the second one. And then she was like, oh my God, I can't wait to see the second one, right? If it's like better than this one. So I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? I think if we're taking it at face value, great characters. Some of the character designs, I was a little like, like I forgot the one of the first demons that they fight. I was like not a fan of how he looked. He looked like a, I don't know. The character model was just not for me.
Little blob,
a little like
squishy,
yeah,
some
a
would
little
say.
squishy.
little
It
fat
looked like a
blob boy. Yeah,
like a
That's actually
VFX
really it, too.
Student project model. You know what I mean? All respect to VFX artists. You know what I mean? I'm sure that they worked really hard on it, but yeah. Some of the character design is a little bit questionable, but again, I think a lot of heart at the core of it. It is like the relationship between Ne Zha, his mom, and his parents, and with the village, his relationship with the village, and his relationship with Ao Bing. So I think that in that aspect, it does a really good job. And like we said before, a lot of creative action set pieces that are just taken to another level. And so I think the foundation is there, and with what they had to do with it, I think it's great. A little bit more pee and poo jokes that I like. I think there's like, I think I counted the second time that I watched it. I think there was like 5 that were just like, what are we doing? But overall, very enjoyable, very fun. I think it's very fun. You could do a lot worse than go see this movie. And it's definitely not a waste of 2 hours of your time, for sure.
Yeah. For free on YouTube.
For free, exactly, for free. There's no reason you shouldn't be seeing this movie. But that being said, the second one,
we're really about to dive into
is the Avengers Endgame level of animation. Like we got
to save that, because I think that's coming for this studio. We got to have another peak with the third one coming up.
What I will say is that it basically is the Avengers Endgame of just animation in general, because the box office, not only is the China gross, the domestic gross, $1 billion, it is $2 billion. It is the first movie to make $1 billion and then $2 billion in its home country. Yeah.
And you can tell. I mean, okay. I mean, I don't know if we had a transition for this, Harald, but
no. I mean, no. Let's finish talking about this now, and then we'll make another transition. But go off.
Yeah, like you can tell that this movie is as much as it is, and it made as much as it did, because the scale of this movie is like taken to another level. Like if the Ne Zha one was, I don't know. I don't even know what a good analogy to this, but if it's just like a marble, right? Like this movie is like a basketball or something, you know what I mean?
It's a boulder.
It is just like 10 times more. You can tell right off the bat, the animation is like so crisp, and they have like these huge armies in the movie, and you're like, okay, we're going. And the fight scenes are just insane. And I'm just super excited to tap more about this, because
I know, I think that's a good halftime point for sure.
It's a great transition.
Yeah,
it's a great transition to dive in. As everyone who's listening to this can probably tell, we're very excited to bring you our thoughts on Ne Zha 2 after this short break. Chris, Jared, one of our favorite movies of the year so far. It is, as we talked about in the previous segment, just surpassed $2 billion in the country of origin that it was released in China. I believe it's sitting 28, 29 million outside, or maybe a little lower than that. By the time this pod drops, it may have also past The Force Awakens for highest grossing or fifth highest grossing movie of all time. We chatted a bit before the break about how cool it was to see, especially after going back and revisiting the first one, going into seeing this movie a second time, how much more effort and work and just pure budget you could see jump to be able to support the quality of the animation, the quality of what I'm going to affectionately refer to as wallpaper, or like you said, Chris, arcane season 2 type shots where they just know they cooked and they sat on it. We had almost double, I think 2.5 times the amount of people working on Ne Zha 2 compared to the first one. I believe what I read was around 4,000 people, over 138 animation companies worked on the second film. So that alone, I just think is the perfect foundation to throw it over to Chris to chat a bit about how we start the second film, and to then again to provide some more context around why we love this movie so much.
Yeah, so I think again, another context thing. I think the way this movie opens necessitates a spoiler alert for the, again, just even the beginning of this movie. So I will just do that right now. So again, that's just a spoiler warning. At the end of the first movie, both Ne Zha and Ao Bing are basically, their bodies are like obliterated by lightning that comes from the sky. Again, because the prophecy was that Ne Zha was going to get struck by lightning and he was going to die. And so then Ao Bing joins him and they both get like vaporized basically. And so the beginning of the movie is that like their soul survived. And so basically this village of people is like creating like the raw materials, and like Tai is there to basically help rebuild their bodies. So they turn into like, they're basically like kind of mush, but then they go into like this like healing lotus thing to basically like get their bodies back. And even then, even that little type, they basically put these blobs into the lotus. And even then, from the very beginning, you can see like the quality and animation go way up, because like just the way, like the smoothness that like the lotus kind of folds in, and like when the characters sort of emerge from it, you can just tell. And like even like the close-ups on the face are just way better. But then it kind of goes straight into the dragons attacking the village, because he believes the dragon father believes that Ao Bing, his son, is dead. So he raids the pass. And basically what it is, they're like, there's this first scene with Shen, again, one of our main antagonists from the first movie. He basically now has the power of like, there's this one dragon that sort of visits, and she has like the power to basically teleport, like basically create like ripples in space, so that people can sort of like run through and like attack, or like, they can get from place to place instantaneously. So the first big action scene in the movie is that Shen basically has like a kind of like a whip that has been like sort of imbued with the powers of this dragon scale, dragon claw. And so then he opens a bunch of rifts, and then a bunch of demons come out and attack the village. And it's the first like large scale battle scene. And so then even the dragons sort of emerge, and they start like blasting everything. And then basically the result of the battle is that they end up going on like this journey, because Ao Bing's body was not fully rebuilt. So they basically have to repair this lotus that rebuilt Ne Zha's body. And to do that, they have to go to like this, basically like the court of heaven, this like very like this place where a bunch of like immortals and like very heavenly looking people have all these magical objects. So he basically Ne Zha has to go through all these trials to make sure that Ao Bing can get his body back. But again, like at least here, the first thing is that, again, the animation, the story, it's just like, it's all just very big. It's like right in your face. It just like, it comes out of the gate swinging. I know these two right here, like the first time they saw it with me, they had not seen the first movie. So a lot of things were going very fast. And it was like, oh, watching it from someone that had seen it before them, they're just like, oh, you probably would have been nice to know like this and this and this little parts, because it kind of goes a little fast at the beginning. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents to start here.
Yeah, man, it is just crazy. I mean, it was a good setup, because I think it starts off as this really simple premise. The first film is pretty simple story about two guys, and then it kind of continues off of that. But then it evolves into something completely insane with competing motives, and it starts to become, a little commentary about people in power and the role of authority in this world that they live in. And it's just it becomes super crazy, and like, things aren't maybe what they seem. I think that's a good way to put it without spoiling it. There are a lot of twists and turns that happen within this story of, you think certain people have some motives and some people don't have some motives, and I think that's a really interesting way to go for it. I think they executed it really cool, in a really cool way, because it just starts off as a really lighthearted, okay, we got to get something to fix this lotus flower, and that just leads them on this journey of a lot of crazy stuff that happens, and I think it happens in a really organic way. They go on to this journey and with the immortals, and then and once the immortals are kind of going in on this, and they're introduced, that opens up a whole new can of worms that these characters need to deal with, and I think that's where it really starts to hit its stride as a movie, when we get those things introduced. And again, there's more to explore. Even in this movie, they didn't really tie up all the threads, you know what I mean? So there's definitely going to be a third movie in this, and so yeah, there's a lot going on in this movie, and I think it just opens it up more because they have, so much more to work with this time around.
Yeah.
You really can tell. Yeah, sorry, Chris. I got to say this part about, you really can tell, especially like you said, Jared, the organic nature of just pure enjoyment that I got out of seeing this film now 2 times. On second viewings is normally when I can tell for myself whether or not this is a movie I will continue to revisit over the years, and how, I don't want to say like necessarily important it is to me, because it is something I wasn't even aware of nearly 3 weeks ago. But when you can look at a film, sit down, really like get into it a second. I mean, the number of like you're I'm gonna say you've been penning this on the pod, Jared, but when you go full gamer mode, like gamer mode turn on, like
Yeah,
lean
gamer
forward
lean
in your
for
chair,
sure.
the
For
gamer
sure.
lean was happening multiple
So
times
many
in
moments. There's like
the second
3
viewing.
definite moments in this movie where we go full on gamer lean,
Yeah.
and it's just time to lock in, because this is the craziest, like some crazy stuff is happening on screen right now. It's like a video game cutscene almost, where, I mean, even better than that. Like there's just, it's so insane how what there's this movie just knows how to get you hyped, man. Like we were in
It's
the
really,
theater.
it's aura farming to the core, but in the best
They are
way.
aura farming,
All of them.
like, in the
Like you guys were alluding to, the plot of the movie gets like bigger because of like the politics of the world. When like Ne Zha basically has to leave his village, because that in the first movie there's only 2 locations basically. It's like Chentong Pass is where the family lives, and then it's the Dragon's Lair. They just go back and forth between these places because it's where the 2 pearls are located. Um, but then once again they have to go on this journey to retrieve like a healing elixir for, the body rebuilding station basically. They have to go to this court of heaven with like these immortals, and like they're exposed to the larger politics of their world, where it's like these immortals are set up as like these like noble, they're all dressed in gold, everything looks very majestic. They're in the clouds, um and they position themselves as demon hunters basically, where like they set themselves up as like these powerful like liberators, where it's like we take anyone that you know that looks like they're causing trouble. Mostly they look like animals. And they sort of, they take them captive to essentially sort of like correct them, is essentially kind of how it's set up. And so even like, they come in contact with a lot of different demons that sort of over the course of the movie sort of acquiesce to their power. And that's kind of a big point of the movie, is kind of like, you start to question or sort of interrogate like how virtuous is one side and how evil is another side, without getting too far into the thing. It's sort of like, you know who is really, you know who's really good and who's really evil again. Where do the lines blur? Where are the motivations like, feel a little mismatched? There's certain scenes that happen, and certain ways things happen where you're like, that feels a little off to me. And more and more of those questions get answered as like Ne Zha and Al Bing are basically trying to, at this point, they are now living in the same body. So I think that's another like sort of on the main plot as like sort of a tangent away, is that basically Ao Bing's body was like crumbled and they need to rebuild it, and they need this elixir. And so in the meantime, Ao Bing and Ne Zha share Ne Zha's body. And so they do this weird thing where they switch places a lot and the face changes and like the symbol on the head changes. And so you get kind of like these kind of like comedic hijinks of the two of them trying to figure out how to share their body while they're like and share their power while they're fighting off these things and passing trials and stuff.
Right, and like the trials now, Ne Zha and Ao Bing have to participate in this whole demon hunting thing, basically, to get this trial, and that's gonna be, and that was like really fun, and that's kind of like this first really lighthearted part of the movie. I also like wanted to talk about like before that. There's this really like nice goodbye scene between him and his mother and the family. I mean, like family was like a really big part of the first film, and they kind of like they don't touch on it as much in this movie. I think it is definitely there's a lot more to explore in this movie, but there is leaving that thread of family in there, and he has this really nice like moment with his mom where he doesn't want to say like doesn't want to hug her because he's he's Ne Zha and he's kind of like he's like a little butthead. So uh, and then that
Literally
kind
3 years old.
exactly, he's only 3 years old, but he doesn't want to hug his mom. But then and then there's a whole kind of story thread with the mom, and that was like really tender, and I love that. And then it gets we get like a little payoff later. I mean, on what that means, and without spoiling too much, but
I do want to touch on real quick then. Can we give some love to the parental figures of this movie and how they are portrayed?
absolute
I
Chad
absolute
is the
chads
dad.
and one of the best mother figures in any kind of these animated films I've seen recently. So I just got to shout him out, the Chad dad, Ne Zha's dad, Li Jing, just an absolute Chad. Just my guy. He stands on his beliefs. He looks out for his son. He still thinks about his community and his
Just
and
a
the
good man.
village as a whole. Like he's that guy. And obviously Lady Yin, who is the mother figure, or who is the mother, obviously, of Ne Zha, she plays one of the benefits of seeing the first film, and I think that was what really made me feel a lot more for the relationship in the second, was not realizing how long Li Jing had been gone, because of what they were gone for over a year, because that's how long it takes to go to the heavens and talk about if they could have saved Ne Zha when they were still trying to figure out how to work around the whole demon orb plot point, right? So which pretty much just left the village, who were terrified at the time of Ne Zha and Lady Yin, to raise the demon orb child and really do it in a good way that still centers Ne Zha as a person, rather than, away from any orb that would have ever ended up with Ne Zha, in the way like the immortals might look at him. His mother obviously looks at him as a son, and so does the dad. So I love them both, and I like their dynamic as like a couple. Even it's not even played up a whole lot, but when it is, it's done really well. And also just shout out Ao Bing's dad, Ao Guang, the king of the dragons. What also an absolute Chad in his
The
own way.
dads are just going super hard in this movie, all just looking out for their people. Like Ao Guang's just looking out for the dragons, and then Ne Zha's dad is just looking out for Ching Tong Pass, and that is a big driving point between the movie. They're all just looking out for each other. And then speaking about your boy Shen, he plays a way bigger. I mean, he played a really big role in the first movie, but he has kind of a role to play in this movie as well. And honestly, arguably a little bit more significant. He was a little bit more of like a mustache twirling villain in the first movie, but this movie he gets like way more complex. There's a specific moment. Do we want to like go into spoilers about this, or
I think for this particular thing, I think it's fine. In
okay?
terms of, yeah.
Yeah, there's a moment in the movie that just adds insane amount of motivation and complexity to his character, is when his little brother shows up. And his little brother kind of just throws a whole wrench into his whole character arc, because up until then he's kind of just like, "Oh, I'm an evil, man working with the dragons." And at this point we're kind of like, "Oh, shoot, like he's still a bad guy." And like his character design is screaming mustache twirling villain, right? He's dressed in all black, and he's literally like a demon, right? Which were, shown in the movie, up until this point, that they're not the greatest, right? And but then all of a sudden we see his little brother show up, and be like, "Hey, what's up, big bro? You're trying to become an immortal. Can
He
I
hit him,
come
"What's
through?
up,
You
little bro?"
promised me that you would take me to the palace, which is where the immortals of the Chen sect, I think
Yeah, the
is
Chan
what it was
sect.
called, the Chan sect. They all hang out, and that just goes, and then it kind of reveals his motivations of trying to become an immortal and become one of the 12. Um, where he has his little brother and his dad back home, and his dad, the little brother kind of explains, oh, my our dad is like super proud, and he's telling us about getting a lot more disciples, and then you're just like, whoa. And the little brother, like, he's animated super cute and everything, and you're like, okay. And it gets really sad, like they have like this really cool little bro big bro relationship. He's just looking out for him. He eventually has to reject him and be like, okay, we can't take you to the palace just yet. And he's like, oh, I guess I gotta practice more to turn in, like, look
I
into
gotta get
like a
strong like
human.
you, big bro.
I gotta get strong like you. And then there's this really cool moment with the Ne Zha's dad, and he's like, we need a new role model. Or he kind of paints Shen in like a really good light, because he was saying the kid needs a good role model. And that was I love that moment, because from that point on, Shen becomes kind of like a different character. He starts to show a little bit more vulnerability, shows a little bit more heart. Maybe he's not totally this mustache twirling villain. He's got a lot more going on back there, and why he's working and moving the way that he's moving. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, I agree. Cause yeah, he shows, a lot just more like intelligence too. Just like, you know, they really kind of weave in the context that he's been sort of working with the dragons and the immortals and all these people for decades, for like a long time. And he's sort of like, without giving anything away, he's very privy to sort of the tricks that his superiors like to pull, both that he's carried out and that he's sort of experienced. And so yeah, kind of they really, that is, I think, sort of the biggest, like, in terms of like the writing between 1 and 2 is
Mhm.
like the biggest achievement in like expanding the story, is like making
Yeah.
his character much more interesting than just like antagonist who does the main like bad factions bidding. Is more of like, okay, like, what's in it for this guy,
Right.
what's in it for this guy, what experience does he come with to the table, and like how does he use that to sort of like motivate his actions going forward in the movie.
Right. And he's ultimately becomes this sort of tragic character, and without spoiling anything, there is like a lot of things that he maybe has to sacrifice, or maybe things that he's looking the other way for, because of the things that he need, like his own goals, right? And he ends up becoming, maybe he becomes, I don't know, manipulated, or in a way, who knows? But like there is like or maybe not. but but yeah, he is, like, again, one of, like, agree with you, Harald. He is one of my favorite characters too, because of the context of this movie. Maybe not in the first one, right? But then in this one, you're like, he really, like, man, he does his thing.
I think even these conversations we're having now, I became a lot more aware of it personally after watching this movie a second time last night with y'all. But I think that this film is doing an incredible job at blurring the lines. Again, we talked about being subversive. Like, this movie does an incredible job at blurring the lines between good, evil, black, white, in a time where, again, like, it's hard to look away from like any, not necessarily political context, but just like context of the world, and just kind of how over the last like however many years maybe we've been fed a lot of stuff in like popular media, and even like some of our favorite movies. Like, there's got to be a good guy and a bad guy. And Chris and I, like, we've talked about this before, how much we love films and movies that tell arguably the more real story, which is like life happens. People have their priorities. People love their families and their friends. And sometimes that comes into conflict with other people. But where the first movie does really sell the antagonists as like the evil guys, like the truly evil dudes that are coming after this town of people, that have been already messed with a lot over the years by this demon orb child, into a film that like really centers no main antagonist until, of course, the twist. But even the twist is like, that throws everything into is the moment that throws all of this into question for you. Like if you were walking into this movie thinking that there was going to be a good and a right side, there's a lot of questionable things that happen on multiple ends, and to have that come out of an animated motion picture, like a big feature film, is really cool to me. I do want to say that after this, there are some things that I think we should talk about that will involve spoilers. So I kind of want to catapult us into that. Thank you so much for listening. If you listen, get a chance to see this movie in theaters, even though I think it's out of the American theaters soon, but hopefully it'll be out streaming some way for people to see. But I wanted to chat a little bit with you all about the pure artistry of this movie and how that is, for me, the biggest leap that this movie takes. Top 3 scenes I'm going to give them to you right now. The still shots on Shen Gongbao versus the demons, the Chansek, the dragons, the fight between Shen Zhangdao, the older Shen father, and Ne Zha, controlled by Ao Bing. And then for me, what I think I realized after yesterday is my favorite shot of the movie is when Ne Zha and Ao Bing are sharing a moment under the stars during the alignment period, where all the immortals meet, and it's just those two talking about subverting expectations and fighting your fate. Like, I will do what I need to do to be a force, probably for good in this world, no matter what people tell me. So I just wanted to get us into that. This movie looks incredible, and those Arcane season 2 type shots, like you were talking about, Chris, are abundant in this movie. They do not stop from beginning to end. They really crank it up in the second half, but like there are so many beautiful scenes in this movie that you could just put in one of those YouTube edits where it's just shot after shot after shot of beauty, and just they knew when they were cooking, you know.
Listen, shout out to these animators because went super hard in this movie. You could tell right off the bat, like, this is gonna look amazing because, like we were saying, the action in the first movie was awesome. There were so many creative ideas, and they just turned that up to another level. The director and whoever the animators who were involved, they just know how to write an action scene, man. The different powers that are involved with Ne Zha, Ao Bing, the dragons later on, even Shen's father, which we all kind of agree is like one of the best fight scenes. He has this crazy electricity power, and they just use that to like the greatest possible way. They have so much movement in all of the scenes. They go from the land to the sea, like down underwater, and then they go up into the air when they have the arrow guy like shooting crazy arrows. There's just so much like kinetic energy in all of these fight scenes. It's just so crazy. Like, I full on gamer lean. I'm like sitting in my chair like, yeah, going crazy because the way that like these action scenes are presented is like, I really feel like they use everything at their disposal from like an animation standpoint to really hit it home. Like, these are some all powerful people just going at it, right? Like, these are immortals fighting demons, fighting like mages. They just have so many like resources at their disposal, and they're using all of them. And like a small thing too, like they have just like the particle effects are just crazy. Like, there's the fire effects, and then there's like a million like little creatures just flying around in the air, or even things going when they were going to the palace, right? The clouds and the water, and like the way that the palace is presented, it looks so clean, and they just sell home, and they just drive everything home with the animation. And I think it was just perfect, right? Like, all of the jade, like from anything, the immortals to the demons to the magma and everything is just like executed so great, and they use everything at their disposal. It's so good. That is definitely the number one thing about this movie. Like, obviously we like glaze the story super hard, and it's a really awesome story, but you could just tell that so much went into animating this movie, and you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we talk about the story a lot just because I think the animation is just hard for us to discuss if you can't see it, because it's just like it would just evolve into like pure glaze. But like
Yeah, it speaks for itself.
if you just like watch the movie, you're just like, wow, like especially the first time when you're watching it in IMAX and like on a big screen, at least in our case, it was just like, this is crazy. It's like watching like WWE or something where like there's like massive collisions or just like huge impacts and it's just like whoa. Like you're just like you just can't believe what you're seeing. Like just all the again, like you alluded to a lot of the different creative ideas. Like there's a guy that shoots infinite arrows. Like you said, there's a guy with the electric teleportation powers. It's like, I don't know how much of this comes from like mythology or books and how much of it is just like people getting together and just being like, F it, like, whatever works. Let's just do that. But I think also too another detail is that again, you mentioned like water, fire, all the different like elements and like surfaces that you see in real life. They're very like realistic looking. Um, but even like, there's some scenes where like people like cry and like there's like tears and like the detail in like the faces when people like burst into tears and you see like the water coming down their face. It's just like, especially in like close-ups, like it's like insane. It's like, it's like Pixar level stuff. I mean, like, something like Toy Story 4, I know a lot of people were sort of touting like the animation quality of that and like how realistically they were getting like textures and water and all this other stuff. But like Ne Zha 2 definitely has its own version of that. Like,
Yeah, you
some
could
of the like
see like
photorealistic textures and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, you could see the texture on his face when he's just super up close. It's crazy. Uh, I just
The ability for the movie to again like the emotion like for the
yeah,
entire final third of this film is insane. Like it does a decent job in the first film. Again, like you can see the foundation of this from a mile away. Which I'll get to this point in a few minutes here when we chat about the subversion and the twist. I think the movie even uses facial features to the benefit of telling the story beyond like emotional beats. Like when we find out who the twist villain is, again, one of my favorite moments in the entire film. Jian Wu Liang, probably the most butcher name I'm gonna have here, but the immortal, the king of the immortals, the head of the Chan sect, who for this entire film is like this kind of tiny Buddha type figure who's like very wise, always grabbing his just like an older elderly man who thinks that young people acting out of line is whimsical and is sipping the water of life and used for these jokes and like trying to be the guy who's like, I am the righteous path, I am leading this group of people, I am the ultimate good, again in this conversation where this movie really subverts what is good and evil and who are the protags and the antagonists. Like he is said to be on the side of Ne Zha when he obviously could tell from the very beginning that Ne Zha and Ao Bing are a combination at that point of the Chaos Pearl. Like whenever Ao Bing takes over, objectively incredibly hilarious whenever it happens because it's just so funny seeing Ao Bing's face on Ne Zha's body. But he can pick up on that. But that moment that Wu Liang comes out as being the main boss villain of this movie when he has that smirk on his face when he leads an attack on Chengdu Pass, like it's over. It's just over from that point. His little like devious smile and how his eyes get, you can just tell that he's been planning this from step one. And even when you find out that the arrow guy and the winged lady are both beasts and demons in their own and monsters in their own right, and they've all been masking from the very beginning and doing what they thought was righteous so that they could contain power and do it at the behest of even good, quote unquote, good reformed demons that are working with Shen Gongbao's dad to learn what is the righteous path. They are the true antagonists of the film, and I just love that scene where the switch turns on.
honestly a twist I didn't really see coming too. I mean, maybe it was a little bit more obvious on the second time seeing it around, but honestly, they don't really hint at it as much. It's kind of more built up like his Darrow, his henchman is more of the antagonist. It's kind of like hinting a little bit towards that, but it ends up him being a complete savage and being super evil and slaughtering a whole town of people, which is insane, right? And I think and then it becomes and like I was kind of hinting at earlier, it kind of evolves into this whole story about, power and, righting wrong, like being an oppressor, what is truly right. And, because he's using these demons that we thought were being reformed as just ways to fuel their own, the immortality pills, right? And I think it really like calls back. I think this movie really like owes a lot to the traditional like wuxia kind of movies. Like where it's that that Chinese fiction, like the adventures of these martial artists, where it's really like centered around removing oppressors, doing fighting for justice and everything, but in like a really different way. And I think that's like super cool, and it shows a lot in the action as well. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it was a really fun twist, unexpected, and because it's really built up up to this point that the dragons are kind of the bad guy, right? And they're like, oh, but it really just shows that it kind of explains in this movie, like, no, they're really kind of got done dirty too. They got done dirty by the Chan sect too, and the Chan sect is kind of the people who are causing all of these problems, right? They're just out for
The master
self-preservation.
planners.
They're the master planners, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
And they're
and
they're
it's
prepping for the deification war, and they only got their own best interests, and they all have like their own interests at heart. Truly, like they're just fighting. I mean, even them, they're all kind of just fighting for their own, you know, preservation at this point. Really
yeah,
interesting.
it's kind of a twist that's set up between the two movies because in the
Right.
first movie the immortals aren't even there. It's just the dragons, and then they're set up again as the evil antagonists that want to destroy the pass. So you're just thinking, oh yeah, going into it, you see the dragons again. There's now more dragons, and like there's like three siblings of Ao Guang, the main dragon we saw from the first one, that are all very like sinister,
Hmm.
very sinister people.
Great
And they sort
designs too.
yeah, great designs, honestly, just like and they do a good job of making each of those dragons like dynamic as well. It's just kind of a side note. But even in then, again, since we've sort of talked about the whole twist and the fact that like the dragons also, those three dragons also like switch sides. And they're sort of like
Mm.
it's kind of about the, like you're kind of referring to is that at first it feels like, the immortals are sort of trying to reform all these demons and like set them on the right path and things like that. But then you realize that at a certain point, it's just what's actually going on is like they're getting these people to like submit and like acquiesce to their power because it's like, oh, this immortal Wu Yang, he like, he basically does deals. He's like, you give me something and I'll basically put like a hex or curse on you to make sure that you do my bidding. And those dragons sort of allude to, we just want to be on the winning side. We just want to be on the side we think is powerful. We're going to lend our services there because we think they're more powerful and they're going to win. And you
Well,
see,
one
yeah,
of the dragon's most genuine moments is when the head of the three dragons that split off, she kind of snaps and she's like, 1,000 years teaches you the rules, and that's when they bow
Mm.
their heads. It's like I was young. Like there's a genuine like belief that it's not just again a mustache twirling villain. It's people that have just been pushed to the edge. Even Wu Liang is like, I make deals. I come through on my end. Like I'm not
Right.
going to just
Right.
screw you over because how else would you honestly be able to have your hands in everything and be the master manipulator of all of this unless you do, for the evil, evil doing that he's doing and kind of a like you were saying, Chris, like or Jared, the ability for him to be the main oppressor of the movie is actually really good, I think, direction to take with him. He still comes through when with the stuff he promised. It's just he's obviously not promising to help everyone. He's there
Yeah.
to be the bad
He
guy.
just wants Chan sect supremacy. That's ultimately what he
yeah,
has, and that's like the one of some of the best villains where you're just like, okay, like I guess I understand where you're coming from, right? Like nobody really. I mean, they committed the crime, right? They're not doing it. He still slaughtered like a bunch of people, right? And side note, that was insane. The
yeah.
fact that you see, and I know, Chris, do you have a thought on that before we touch on that scene
Well,
specifically? Because I do want to talk about that.
I think I wanna touch on the fact that you said crime because again, like we're talking about, he knows that at the put like there's a post credit scene and he's like, we've committed an unforgivable crime, you know. So it's like he knows what he did was wrong. He wouldn't call it a crime if he didn't think it was wrong. But at the same time, again, it is for dominance. It's like
Mm.
we have to do what we must. This guy basically came to the conclusion that we will do what we must to make sure that our sect, our clan, is the most powerful around in advance of whatever war that they set up in the movie. It's like we want to make sure that we are the most powerful. We have the most alliances. We have the most like resources at our disposal, and he's willing to commit crimes to do it.
Yeah, he's the one. I'm not gonna get my hands dirty, but I'm gonna pay someone to get their hands dirty to do it. You know what I mean? And that's something. I mean, we've seen that so many times, but I think the way that it's presented here in the context of like the immortality and everything, and the gods is so interesting. But yeah, I mean, great twist villain. He turns insanely crazy looking. He turns into like a fighter character at the end.
Literally,
And
yeah.
we'll talk about
Final
that scene maybe
boss.
in a bit. But I do want to touch on that scene where he destroys the entire Chengtong Pass town. The the cojones on the director to show something like that, right? Like we literally, and I didn't catch this the first time we watched it, but the second time we watched it because we watched Ne Zha 1, is that they literally show the family that the little girl that believed in him, right? That was like, and then the uh the boy who was kind of against him, but then ended up pledging allegiance to be like his like fighter force within the town, right? Like these people that he knew, like they're straight up just showing them dying and like getting basically Pompeyed and like uh preserved in ash because of the lava. And that's just insane. Like for a kids movie, I was like shocked, right? When we watched it, like my girlfriend who loved the movie, she I was looking over and there was like a visible like, oh my god, what is going on? And I had the same reaction too, right? Like they really drive the point the drive the point home that this dude is about the business and he's evil. And it kind of really, Naja kind of pops off after this and it gets a little angry, and rightfully so. And I think maybe, I mean, if they didn't include it, I think they still would have sold it, but it definitely hits home like, wow, like that is completely justified to react that way, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, a crazy choice, but I was really appreciated that they did add that in.
Well, again, that's another sort of plot point that's set up between two movies. Like you said, there's so many of those like weird side characters that you get to know because like they don't like Ne Zha, and they kind of take turns bullying each other, or like the one little girl that comes up to him and gives him a thing, is like, oh, you saved me or whatever in the first movie, and then like yeah, they're just all dead. But then also too, like there's so many threats to destroy the pass from the dragons in the first two movies. And so when you not only do not see, at least at first, you see the pass and it's completely destroyed. Like it's already been wiped out is like insane. Just being like, oh, like what happened here? And then, the movie, it does a good job of like forcing you to at least come to that initial conclusion that the people you think that have been threatening to destroy the pass this entire time probably did it. So it's
Mhm.
like, okay. And then you sort of realize again when the twist happens, you're like, wow, that was good.
Oh,
I
they
did
set
not
up
see
the
that one
twist
coming. Yeah.
so good. I loved it, and like honestly, makes you believe the whole master plan thing. You're like, wow, yeah, that was
When
actually executed really well.
when Al Guang, like you see the surprise in his face because he understands. One, he understands that they know they didn't do it, but he's like, okay, well, if the dragons were involved, where can that be? But even his mind shoots directly to, is my son Al Bing okay? Like he is already probably going like through a plethora of different emotions, being like, why did they attack? Like, why would Shen Gongbao choose to do that? Like it sets you up. But oh my god, again, one of my favorite scenes. I think this is collectively for us, right? It's almost like a travesty that they keep you on the edge of your seat, hoping to see how the scene of Shen Gongbao saving Ne Zha's parents and concocting a plan to go after them, because, like we talked about many times, like he knows how the immortals roll. Like he's been the right hand man in the Chan sect before. And they do such a good job of it. Conceivably, when his brother dies of the arrow wound, like and it cuts off there, you just get nothing but rage. Like they're having such a good moment, Shen Gongbao and the parents, about just generally war and what is the importance of us looking after the young ones and like the people who are here, like who are being the ones to suffer the most. And that's when they start diving into Shen's really complicated history and why he is trying to become an immortal. Like
Right.
his commitment to this tract is something that obviously you can tell comes from his dad and his upbringing. But even in a moment where his brother comes back to the past, and dies in his arms. Oh man, the movie cutting it off there is wonderful, because then his whole turnaround to just basically turn on the brain into action and being the hero of the moment, and
Mhm.
choosing to save the two parents of Ne Zha is incredible to me, and leaving it on that cliffhanger of him surrounded by not just the
Yeah.
dragons, not just
You think
the
he's
sea
gonna
demons.
you really buy the fact that
Yeah,
he's the one who did it, but and then when they cut back and he becomes the hero, you're just like, "This is sick." Like,
yeah,
it makes so much sense too, like, he's not dumb, right? He knows that, like, the immortal, uh that he knows that that's his student who shot him, right? Like, he's not gonna just act out of rage, he's actually just smart guy, and he's like, "Okay, this situation is messed up. We gotta figure out a way to expose these guys and expose these fools, right?" And that ends up leading us to the final act, right, where so many stuff just goes down. So much stuff. We have a bunch of battles. I think we have like two. It's basically just one long battle. We have like some small points where we get, in the cauldron and everything, but it gets like it's just a one really long climax, and it is just a huge ride.
well, Chris, I'm also going to ask you, because I don't want to take your thunder away from it. What are some things you noticed on the second viewing, especially relating to the cauldron, and how scary the design is of that, and how morbid the ability of that cauldron is, because of how that really gets everyone inside the cauldron to join up, and push back against the Chan sect to try to survive, becoming
It's a good
immortality
scene.
pills. Those skulls, man. Oh, they're
Yeah.
so creepy.
Yeah, the way that they ignite the cauldron, yeah, that was the biggest thing for me when, the immortal like activates the cauldron. It's a bunch of just like skull heads that are just like dormant, and they all just start like screaming, and they all just like start vomiting fire and lava. It was like, what, like visually it's a very like striking image, because it's like, I feel
Right.
like it kind of alludes to the cauldron is built on like, all
Yeah.
these dead people, the people that
Yeah.
had entrapped and like entrapped in there and like killed and vaporized, and now like the remnants of like their souls are like there to just emit lava and kill the next people inside of the cauldron, which is just crazy, just the enclosure that it
Just nuts.
creates. Yeah, it's just like,
Eh,
well, because also too, last thing I'll say about the cauldron for you guys want to chime in, is that when you see the cauldron first in the heavens, it's a small cauldron. It's just
Oh,
like
yeah,
you
yeah,
see the tip of it. You
yeah.
just see like the very top, because the
Just the
rest
tip.
of it is covered by the clouds of heaven. And then when he decides he wants to use it, all of a sudden, like the area gets bigger, the house unfolds, and then the giant
Ooh,
thing comes into the air, and you're like, wow, this thing is
It's the Chinese Death
massive.
Star.
it's
Like,
Yeah, it
crazy.
is the
Yeah,
it's
Chinese. It is
literally
the
the
essentially,
Death
Chinese
right?
Star.
Death Star.
And
Yeah.
it should be noted at this point in the film, hopefully you've seen it and you're not going through spoilers, but basically at this final point, Naja is believing that Ao Guang was the one who, slaughtered Chengtang Pass. So he goes after him, and he, with the help of the immortals and his crew, they're going to try and slaughter the dragons and use them to make immortality pills. But ends up that Naja finds out that wasn't the case. His parents are actually alive. Yay! Uh, until until later,
Yeah.
only for a little bit, and then he ends up fighting with the dragons and the abyss monsters against the Chan sect at this point. And so, you know, that's it. There's almost like that misunderstanding. He defeats Ao Guang, but then they all end up in the cauldron, being like, "Oh shoot, uh, we kind of messed up, and now we got to fight back." And so and I love that. I mean, I think I love it happens a little quick, but he's always like he's just quick to be like, "Whoops, I messed up. I got fooled. Time to act stand on business, I guess."
Literally.
And it's crazy. And like and then they have the big final battle between the three dragons and the Chan sect. Um
Well, I think we should round about a little bit to talk a little bit about the scene between Lady Yin and her son Ne Zha, when you just think all
mhm.
hope is gone. I know we talked even before or after the break, but this moment is not only for a movie with so many turning points, like it is the final emotional turning point that matters, because this is what catapults Ne Zha into understanding, his mom least for now, it's a very believable death, becomes a pearl. And here is Lady Yin, like running through the very short life that she's gotten to share with her son. One that has only been of love and care and of appreciation for this one person, her own, her own life and blood. And it's the most emotional Ne Zha is in any moment of any part. Even going back to how he felt when he felt he was lied to in the first film, right? It's the crying physics. It's the crazy power that is the spikes throughout their body that prevent them from moving for up to
Oh yeah,
6 hours.
insane.
Like having to have the final hug.
Also, a great scene when like they're trying to Ao Bing and Ne Zha are like trying to attack the immortal. He's like freeze, and then you
Yeah,
just see like
so
the
Insane.
good,
ripples in the
so good.
heart
Mhm.
and stuff, and they just freeze
You
in
think
place.
that
Insane.
that's like their lowest point, right? They're all in the cauldron, and they have that emotional scene. And like Chris and I think we watched another analysis on this, and then we were like, but the balls to sorry, I don't know if this is a family friendly podcast, but uh, the balls of the director to fake out the death where parents die off screen, and then to bring them back on screen and then kill them all, which was insane. But it was such a beautiful callback of she finally got her hug and really kind of like bringing home the idea that she just loved Ne Zha as a son. Like it was never anything like he had to be an immortal. He never disappointed her. It's just like that was her son, and like it was super emotional. I see some tears were shed in the theater. Maybe not me, but you maybe Harald.
You know
Maybe
how it
my
is.
maybe my companion who cried a
I'm
little bit.
built different.
Yeah.
I'm built
But
different,
well, I
but
mean,
it was yeah.
you talk a little bit about the like callbacks, and I think that's a big strength
Yes.
of both the movies. Is that I think as American movie consumers who are like obviously in date with Marvel movies and things that have sequels and stuff like that, um, we love a good callback around here. So the fact that it's able to sort of like tie a lot of things back to one thing, and you're like, oh yeah, I can see that. The movie didn't need to like spell all this stuff out for me, where because like even from like slight animation thing, like uh, when the two of them, Ne Zha and Ao Bing, come together to make vapor and start transforming. That's another thing that's like, again, we didn't really talk about this in the first part, but there's like a transformation spell they use to sort of deceive people, and then
So
in
good.
this movie they both use it on these dragons to kind of get them fooled, and it becomes like a whole bit.
And
But
they play
yeah,
off of it, and then they make it better. Like
yeah,
it's like double time. It's so good. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know if you're gonna chat about the more of the callbacks too, but another one was just like the act of just pushing up against this overwhelming force, right? Like in the
yeah,
first movie, like again, we didn't talk about this, but Ao Bing is the first one trying to crush Cheng Tong Pass with his ice powers, but in this one, they're pushing up, trying to open the cauldron, and like there's that parallel again of just like you know pushing back against like something that's supposed to crush you. And it's like I love that, and they did such a good job, like, and that's what really makes me feel like this was just supposed to be one story, right? Like it's just they're calling back to these things constantly, you know what I mean? And there's so much like character growth and like parallels with these movies. It's just, oh, it's so good, so
yeah.
good.
I mean, even just like the visuals behind it too, because yeah, you're right. It's a similar thing where like there's a supreme force like above them trying to crush
Yeah,
them. In the first one, it's a giant, lightning storm. But in
yeah.
this one, it's literally like the power of this like entire immortal sect all like getting together and forming a tree and like its leaves and all just
Yeah,
pushing down with all their might on this
crazy.
cauldron. They're basically just they're just fighting over a lid. Like these two forces are just fighting over a lid. These guys above are trying to push it down, and then like the demons and the dragons and our two pearls are trying to lift it up with all their might. It's just like
Just so creative.
insane. Yeah.
So creative, and like and there's this beautiful moment with all of the abyss monsters where Ao Guang's like, "You got sold out. These are the people who's supposed to be your, like be your king." But nah, like this is, you know, whether you have any grudges or something along those lines. He's like, if you have any grudges, like, what was it? I don't know exactly what he says, but it's like no time to hold grudges, essentially. And then they all just come together and they all join together to push back against the cauldron, and then it becomes basically demons versus the immortals at the end after they destroy the cauldron together.
It's the greatest reverse tug of war I've ever seen on a movie
Right,
screen.
exactly,
Like,
exactly.
just like the pure strength and will of that all. It's crazy that we've come to a point that in this movie at the moment, where we had jokes calling back to like American meme culture at the beginning. I mean, we even get an
Yeah,
LOL at the
demure,
height of
very
it,
demure,
but we
very
go from
mindful.
yeah, we would go from the screaming beaver meme from 2008
Yeah.
to like thousands, hundreds of thousands of beings going to like war in the I mean, and that's
Yeah,
just where I kind of want this conversation to come to a close here is like
yeah.
we
This
have to
final
talk about
battle
this final battle, the
is
Kaiju Wu
insane.
Liang. It's wild.
When they are facing off, right, and they just have all of these like I'm thinking, right, animation assets just facing each other, and there's like thousands of things on screen, right? It looks like water basically because there's just so many like small beings, and then they
Yeah.
crash into each other, and there's like kind of blood and guts coming out, and then it just becomes like it really feels like you can feel the scale of this battle happening, right? Like this is truly a fight of like immortal spirits versus demons, right? And then Ne Zha is in his final form, right? Like his true form where he's an adult and not a baby anymore. And they're all kind of like going all out on this, and it's and then yeah, the immortal turns into his final form or his true form, I guess, where it's this kind of Street Fighter tree character.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so like truly it is unless you see the movie, it's so
Right.
hard to describe like what is going on like in this movie. It's just more of like a visual feast. Just like it's hard to
Mhm.
to like describe the individual beats because there are so many different little sequences where like a character pulls out a weapon or like uses their feet to like fight with a
Yeah.
spear, that kind of thing, or like in like cast vapor, like
They're
cast
playing off
spells.
of each other's
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
others'
like kind of like doing
powers,
tag team
tag
animations as
team
well,
stuff.
especially like more towards the end. It's like, you know, there's so many different they establish so many different powers and abilities and people that can and the infinite arrow guy is always everywhere.
Yeah, oh, he's so
But
good.
but there's just so many people just playing off of each other like left, right, and center. It's just kind of like, it is a movie. This sounds like marketing, but you really have to see it to believe it. Like
Absolutely.
it's just like we
Absolutely.
can't talk about it because
And
we
yeah.
physically cannot find the words
And you're
to like
just
really
and it
describe it
gets
for
you
you.
so hyped, you know what I mean? Like it really knows to how you get you like in that like yeah kind of mode, you know what I mean? Like similar to like a you know obviously Avengers Endgame had a lot of building up to it. We can make that comparison a couple times in this. But where you're getting hyped because one, you have connection to these characters, but to like the scale of what's going on and like the way that the battle is executed, and in this way with the way that it's executed, I feel like it brought me that same level of like wow, this is insane type of feeling, you know what I mean? And it was interesting how they were dealing with the fact that they are immortal, right? Like some of these guys can't die. You know what I mean? So how do we deal with that? And so like the way that the battle ends, it's like really like um, you know, kind of almost in a way, like there's definitely more that's going to happen, right? And there's more continuation on the story. But Harald, like, what do you have any other thoughts on the final battle that you wanted to add in on that?
I think the only thing of substance I can add to this is the pure epic nature of the final battle. It's
Mhm.
the only way this could have ended. You have, like you said, the immortals on one side. You have the demons lining up with the monsters, lining up with other folks that like. I mean, who even knows? I mean, I have to put this point in now is that we don't even fully know the lore behind Ne Zha's parents now, even though like sadly passing the death, and now, well, again, death is maybe subjective at this point because she becomes like a pink version of the immortality pill, that's talked a lot about. Like you think I'm left at the end of this battle for all of the legendary moments, thinking how is this how all immortal pills are cultivated, is with the souls of demons and non-demons alike? Like is the true evil of the immortals that they are like, it seems like an easy one-to-one to make. Like maybe I'm sure there's going to be something in the third film that really goes into it, but there's
Oh, yeah.
still enough for me to, let alone wanting to just see a visual feast in the third film. I'm imagining where the budget will go up and the amount of people working on it probably will increase because of how popular this was. so many storylines are still left open in a really intriguing way. I do have to say, though, for my favorite point of this final battle, alone from how crazy it is when the two sides go to war with each other, and they're just all have the ability to fly like maniacs, and then you just see the splotches of red throughout the like, you just realize this is flesh and blood and people dying on impact. That is the pure power of this battle. I love when the combination finally of the Chaos Pearl, when you have Ao Bing and Ne Zha in their truest forms. Ne Zha's got six hands. He's got all of his trinkets and his battle weapons. Ao Bing, for the first time, is like a full-on dragon, and they're just going right after the immortal father, and he can barely put up with any of it. And you almost get like, you get little bits of this. There's a lot of anime influence in this, like calling out calling out your battle name for whatever power you have. And final, like, oh my god, my favorite part of that final battle is just the impact frame of Ne Zha coming in, where it's like almost entirely animated in a different style than the entire film. Like, so 2D animation from the beauty of what they were doing before, just like splash screen that just to the end of
the only time that ever happens in the entire two films is just that one moment where you feel it. It's insane. It's so good. Like the music, I think.
Oh, we haven't even talked about the music.
Like, the music, it hits at the right moments. You know what I mean? Ne Zha's theme is really sick, and like very like adds to that impact, right?
Chris is the music guy.
I guess last thing I think I'll say about the music before we go is that just like, yeah, it does a really good job of like syncing up the music with like a big wide shot. I think is like, it's like really just reinforces like the scale of some of these huge, gigantic set pieces. I think it's just something that like, yeah, just the whole thing is about scale. There's just so much expansive animation. The music really just reinforces it.
So y'all, man,
how many?
Yeah, what a film.
Yeah, what a film. So good. I think, I don't know, there's just so much to say about it. I think we could probably talk about this movie for hours if we wanted to.
Yeah.
This is already probably going to be one of the longer pods on the channel.
Yeah.
So,
but right now it's got a limited release in the US. It's going to come to the UK in about a week as of the time we're recording this, and then it's going to come to Japan a little later. So a lot of countries haven't even seen the movie yet. So I'm interested to see I'm interested to see what other countries think of it. Yeah, because obviously what we think about it. I think we think it's pretty good.
Movie.
We think it's pretty good.
So let's go around. Let's stop going around the final rating of our movie. I'm going with the really strong 4.5 lightning bolts out of 5 on this one. I just think I almost just want to leave that last little perfect rating for to see what they do in the third movie. But there are little things here and there. Like I still think it's hilarious how this whole movie starts, where the dragons just, and they've been plotting since the beginning, so maybe this was partially their plan. But when the reason this whole thing happens is like the dragons are taking out their own kin before they know that Ao Bing's in the protective circle at the beginning, getting his body rebuilt by Tai. Other than little things like that, I just think this is almost like a perfect animated film. Like it gives you everything you want and more. And again, like we've been talking about throughout this entire Glaze Fest, is just we have seen things in this movie that you have not seen in movies that are traditionally made in our part of the world. And part of it's got to do with the country of origin, but also I think just seeing new stuff that's sold and a story that's told in such a way that everyone can connect to it in their own way is a powerful thing. So I'm going a really strong 4.5 out of 5 on this one.
Yeah, I would also give it 4.5 out of 5. I think it's I wrote this in like my little letterbox review. It's that like the only other time I've in an international movie like experiencing something and really reacting to something like this is RRR. Just because like these are just insanely spectacle driven movies that just have outlandish ideas and sort of like take the mythology of their cultures, and in these cases like these couple revolutionaries that never met, and like putting them together. And in Ne Zha's case, it's like these two pearl superpowered guys who are normally at odds but work together in these movies, and just uses that as a springboard to just for these insanely creative ideas in battles and animation and things like that. So yeah, very, very pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed this movie.
Totally agree. I'm gonna go 4.5, maybe 4.8 immortal pills out of 5. And yeah, I think y'all summed it up perfectly. Like what more can you ask from an animated film, right? Like this, I haven't felt like, and Triple R is such a good comparison because it's just moments of wow, like and like silliness, but also just pure awe, and like this is the reason why we go to the movies type of feelings, right? Of just you're just sitting in your seat, just like wow, like I can't believe like this is made by people, right? And uh, I love it, and I think it uses the medium of animation perfectly, and I think the only kind of level of scale I guess I could compare it to is like Spider-Verse, right? I think in terms of the way that the animation is used, I think obviously Spider-Verse is really like stylized and has its own merits, and I think I love it for a lot of different reasons, but also I think this is just executed in such a fun way, and I love the characters and I love the lore around it. um and it's just such an awesome animated film, right? Like I think there's not a lot of things that you can ask for more that this hasn't done, right? And I think it's just goes to show like this there's a lot more to look out for in like the international film market in animation, right? Like we're really like stepping it up on the global stage. I think traditionally we have seen, like yeah, like the US based films be the powerhouses in animation, but like this just goes to show like this is um it's gonna maybe starting a new era, and it's really interesting, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Overall, just really loved this film.
Well, yeah, I mean, hey, shout out Flow, another international film. Like, yeah, it's a very good point
Exactly.
to end on here. We are just being blessed in the international arena of animation. And as a podcast that really loves good animation and good animated films and shows, like, just keep them coming, y'all. Yeah, I can't wait until we go into the AMC theater in a year and Nicole Kidman's talking about what makes the movie better. Then you see a little Ne Zha smirk on one of the screens instead of Austin Butler. But I do have to say, no segment to end here about what we've been watching, because thankfully I can just plug the next pod is going to be what we've been watching, which is the first Slam Dunk, another release that happened in SIFF theaters recently, and Mickey 17, Bong Joon-ho's new movie. So we're really excited to talk about that in the next pod. But this has been a great time talking with some of my closest friends about a movie we love, Ne Zha 1 and 2. Go out and see it if you haven't yet. But
If you can, if you can.
if you can.
Hopefully, it'll also be free on YouTube, but maybe not.
I think they'll be charging a pretty penny for that one.
Yeah,
when it comes
They'll be
on.
charging a bit of
Yeah.
cash. You should drop that coin
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
sure. But to bring this behemoth, worth it, absolutely worth it. To bring this behemoth of an episode to a close, my name is Harald Hyllseth.
My name is Chris Angkico.
And I'm Jared Garalde.
We will talk to you all in the next one. Peace.